In the summer of 2020, I decided to take my love of pool swimming to the ocean. Too broke for a wetsuit and too stubborn to not give it a go anyway, I committed to acclimatizing to the cold ocean water. After months of rainy summer Vancouver swims, the weather was finally looking up and I was finally feeling acclimatized. It was 6 a.m. on a sunny August Tuesday and I was biking to Kitts Beach to meet up with my friend for a regular Tuesday swim. As I locked up my bike, I looked out over the sun rising over the beautiful Salish Sea, and I thought to myself, I am so lucky to live in this city. I marched down to the beach, met up with my friend Nick, and we got ready to swim. As we'd been doing for every Tuesday and Thursday for the past couple of months, we left our backpacks on the beach and took the first curse-inducingly cold steps into the water. After about 30 minutes of swimming and pretending that there was definitely nothing lurking underneath us, we finished our swim and walked back out to the beach. As we walked towards our bags, I noticed something different. Nick's bag was still there, but mine was nowhere to be seen. Just my luck. Mouths agape, we rushed to assess the situation. My clothes, my wallet, my house keys, my phone, my backpack, my shoes, and my bike lock key were gone. I was starting to feel panicked, but Mick, ever the calm problem solver, immediately called a friend to come and pick me up and drive me home. So shortly, I was sitting bitterly cold in my swimsuit in the passenger seat of some random person's car, driving home, worried about my bike and hoping I had a spare bike lock key. My bike was my pride and joy, and my primary form of transportation. And it didn't sit well with me that some thief was walking around with the key to my chariot. So I needed to get home and search for this bike key. And when I finally did, the only way I can describe myself is a cat after having been unceremoniously dumped into a bath. I was cold, spitting with anger, and my hair was sticking up everywhere. I not so politely ignored my roommates and began searching through drawers, book bags, desks, everywhere, trying to find my spare bike key. And after a long search, I couldn't find it anywhere. Just my luck. I was feeling kind of frenzied and didn't know what to do, so I called my little sister's boyfriend, who worked at a bike shop. Granted, this bike shop was in Ontario, but I was panicking and I didn't know anyone else who might have any expertise in this situation. So I gave him a call and he said, with a handsaw and some elbow grease, you should probably be able to get your U-lock off in just under an hour. And his dad lived a couple blocks away from Kitts Beach and he had a handsaw. And with no other kind of prospects or solutions in sight, I figured I'd take his advice. So one Evo ride and an awkward conversation with my sister's boyfriend's dad later, I had a handsaw and was rushing back to Kitts Beach to try and free my bike. I walked up and luckily it was still there. I breathed a sigh of relief and was re-energized by the prospects of having my bike free in less than an hour. I energetically started sawing through the bike lock, and about 10 minutes later, a young lifeguard came up to see what the heck this sweaty, crazy person was doing, trying to break into a bike. And I looked up at him and politely snarled, "It's my bike." He assessed the feral creature trying to saw open a bike lock and rightly decided that this was none of his business. About 30 minutes of sawing later and only a few scratches on the bike lock, another gentleman walked by and stated in an irritatingly calm way, "I don't think that saw's gonna work." Unfazed and undeterred by his opinion, I looked up at him and said, "Don't think I asked for your opinion." He went on his way, and I continued my frenzied saw through this bike lock. By hour 2, I was not even halfway through and was feeling increasingly desperate for a drink of water, some shade, and sweet salvation. By hour 3, I was feeling strong and empowered and like an independent woman who was going to get this bike lock off, come hell or high water, and haters be damned. It didn't matter that 12 other people had come up to me and given me their unsolicited, wrong opinions that this wasn't going to work, or that I had dropped 8 F-bombs while kids were walking by. I was getting this bike lock off. By the 4th hour, I was hoping that a strong man would come by with a chainsaw and take me and my bike lock out of our misery. But at the 4-hour and 15-minute mark, I felt it. I felt the saw cutting through the last shards of metal, and I felt the bike lock snap in half, and I felt it fall on my foot. Just my luck. I jumped in joy and pain and celebrated around the mangled remains of my bike lock. I kissed my bike, kissed the ground, put my hands in the air, and joyfully rode home. About 6 months later, just as I was starting to forget this ordeal had ever happened, I was cleaning and I heard something thunk to the ground. I looked down and it was my spare bike lock key. Just my lock.
This one is called The Heart of the Deal. Being somewhat new to working at the thrift store, I made a gross miscalculation. The miscalculation took the form of a Balkan heavyweight in his 80s. "Give me for $1, he said in his endearing Slavic accent. I imagined that he might become my surrogate grandfather. You see, my grandfather was also an authoritative old guy from the Balkans. He would tell you to stand aside as he cut you in line, or that you were going to buy his old TV for $20 above his asking price in the ad. You would simply have to go along. A former judge from ex-Yugoslavia, he looked more like an executioner, and towards the end of his life, he had a long scar going down his nose that made you wonder if he was KGB. But he always had a soft spot for me. And in my naive state, I thought that the old Balkan guy at the counter might develop one too. As it happened, I was wrong. He slammed a loonie on the counter before I could even answer. To start, the price was $2. Then there was the issue of the tax. Now, one of the great privileges of working at a thrift store is that you get to give discounts. Cutting a deal might involve lowering the price to include the tax, but it's a reward for being a nice customer, and it's a power that I wield like a despot. I decided to let it slide, but wanting to keep some power for myself, I insisted that it was $105 with tax. He pretended not to hear and waddled away, so I shrugged and popped the loonie in the till. So much for becoming his surrogate granddaughter. I thought that would be the last of him, but he re-emerged a while later with 3 vinyl photo albums. As far as I could tell, they still contained the grainy photographs of a family in their brown 1970s home. What was he even doing with this stuff? They were priced at $8 each. God knows why, but I told him so. "Give me for $5, he said. "Miss, please, I'm a poor student." I looked at him, a little impressed at his audacity, as he turned out the empty pockets of his linen jacket. "Fine," I said, "but you have to pay the tax this time." He put the $5 bill on the counter. "This is all the money I have," he said. I relented, and just like that, he disappeared into the bowels of the store. The whole thing came to a head over a pair of coal-hand shoes. When the heavyweight set them on the counter and insisted he'd buy them for $16, despite their $40 price tag, I felt all my notions of being an assertive young woman dissipate into the musty air. Having seen my panic-button eyes, my manager came to lend some muscle. Early on, it was decided that we'd go no lower than $20. When my manager had to run to the back to take care of some business, the haggler insisted that she'd agreed on 16, as if I hadn't been standing over her shoulder when she told him it was a firm $20. She returned to show him a pair of coal-hand shoes on the Nordstrom website that looked nothing like the ones he was holding, I admit. "Those shoes are worth $400, she exclaimed. I had my doubts, but there was no backing down now. The old guy found a spot on a low stool in front of the counter to wait for the opportune moment when she was gone. We were at a standstill. After half an hour with no clear winner, the decisive blow occurred when my manager called an interested buyer. She said, covering the receiving end. "I've got a guy who'll buy the shoes for $30. He's willing to come within the hour." Whether the heavyweight had been knocked down by this last blow or had suddenly discovered something better to do than show down over a pair of shoes, I'll never know. But I do know that when she left, he meekly removed a credit card from the inner pocket of his jacket and motioned toward the card reader. "Okay," he said, "20. Plus tax," I said. He didn't put up a fight. After a year of being rejected for a room in assisted living, my Balkan grandpa too gave up his fight. Instead, he fled to Bosnia on a one-way plane ticket, bought with a credit card he never intended to pay off, and left the scattered effects of his life in an apartment where he would never return. On his way out, the old Balkan guy turned to me for the last time. "Miss," he said, "please, give me the car for $1. He was referring to a toy car that had caught his eye. I could have easily given it to him. After all, it was just junk, and the influx of new junk never really ended. But instead I said, "It'll be waiting for you when you return," and I meant it.
Hitchhiking. I'm going to talk about hitchhiking. Don't do it, kids. It's not safe. But when I was a young man, a lot of people got around that way. And this story takes place when I was hitchhiking across the country as a young man. And standing out there on the highway with long hair and a scruffy beard, dressed from head to toe in faded denim. As you can imagine, I stood out there for a lot of hours. But this one point, who's going to pick up a young hippie like that? Well, another young hippie. This young guy, about my age, long hair and a beard too. "Hey man, hop in," you know, and he had this big old American car, the kind you really want to get picked up in when you're hitchhiking. Big, comfy sofa for a front seat. You know, like a 74 Chevy Caprice or something like that. Big old heater blasting. And so we start driving along, and now, if anybody here is old enough to remember those days, there used to be a cute little sticker that people thought was funny to put on their glove box that said the old saying, "Cash, ass, or grass, nobody rides for free." And he had one of those stickers in there, and I didn't have much cash on me, and I wasn't that sort of fella. So I pulled out my bag of weed, and I started twisting up a doobie. And he was like, "Yeah, right on, man." To the joy of my new chauffeur, he was like, "Yeah, I'm in." So I started passing this back and forth, and then he pulls out a really cool silver flask full of whiskey and starts passing that back and forth. So we're driving along, smoking doobies and drinking whiskey, driving out in the prairie, having a good old time. Now the thing I didn't tell you is the night before I had a horrible, horrible night trying to sleep, and I slept in a barn with no door, and all I had was some old oily rags and some old dirty hay for a blanket. So I'd had a real horrible night the night before. So I get in this big old car with a heater blasting and some, you know, marijuana in my lungs and some warm whiskey spreading through my belly. And I was feeling pretty good, and I'll admit it, I fell asleep. I fell asleep there in the passenger seat. And when I woke up, I don't know how long I slept for, but when I woke up, I will tell you, I was certain of two things. One, it was dark out, it was nighttime. And two, the car was rolling end over end down the highway and into the ditch. Like I was in a washing machine, smash, bash, crash, and not knowing what the hell was going on. So the car came to rest on its roof down in the ditch, and I was laying on my back in the bottom on the inside of the roof. What the hell just happened? I had the wind knocked out of me. I couldn't breathe for about a minute. When I finally was able to get some air in my lungs, I started yelling for help and yelling for the other guy, and he wasn't answering me. I didn't know what the hell had happened. I just knew we crashed bad. So eventually I managed to drag myself out, and I was still calling for the guy, and he wasn't answering. And then the authorities showed up pretty quick. There was fire and ambulance, everybody. And I was freaking out saying, "There's another guy here. He's trapped under the car, maybe, I don't know." I was really scared the guy was dead or hurt. And so they brought a tow truck, they lifted the car, but they couldn't find him anywhere. And finally they started looking at me and going, "Well, how much you had to drink tonight?" I said, no, I'm a hitchhiker, and I just got a ride. Yes, I was drinking, but this is not my car. And I went to show my ID, and of course, my wallet's gone. So I'm going to dig through the car. My name's Clint Wilson. I'm from British Columbia, yada, yada. I told them the whole story. I said, my wallet will prove who I am. They couldn't find my wallet. Instead, they ran the place to the car, and they said, well, this is registered to Charles Rampart was the guy's name. And it comes back that he's about your age, height, weight, hair color, eye color, everything. Listen, you guys, it's not me, I swear, as a hitchhiker. But they couldn't find the guy, so they ended up taking me in and booking me as Charles Rampart. They thought I was lying, and that just to get out of drunk driving. So I went before the judge the next day, and he said right away, he goes, "You're not going to pull this crap in my courtroom. I've seen this story in a script on a Hollywood movie or something." He goes, "Something about pretending you're a different guy. I'm not going to fall for this." And then he said, "Now I'm going to adjourn for the weekend and let you think about it for a couple more days." So I'm sitting there rotting in this cell, trying to prove who I am. My mom, who could have verified me, this is back before cell phones and the internet, was conveniently out of the country in Rarotonga for some reason that one time. And I couldn't get a hold of her. And at one point over the weekend, a police officer actually came to me with a piece of paper and he said, "So you're claiming you're Wilson Clint, full name Clinton?" And he read off my social insurance number. I mean, yes, that's me. He goes, "I don't know if you want to be this guy. This guy is wanted right now for passing bad checks around town here." I'm like, "You idiots, that's the guy. He's got my wallet, he's pretending to be me, and he's cashing bad checks." But they still wouldn't believe me. Finally what happened was, Monday morning came, I went back before the judge, and he said, "Listen, I've got 3 things to say to you." He said, "Number one," he goes, "we caught Rampart, we arrested him over the weekend doing a break-in, and he was with a girlfriend, and she gave him up. We know he's him and you're you now, we believe your story." And he goes, "Number 2, I'm going to release you immediately." So I was like, "Thank God, but what's number 3? He said, "Number 3, he goes, "I want to apologize for that, thinking that you stole that tale from a Hollywood script, because this is way too twisted. I don't think Hollywood would ever make it because it's not believable." But he said to me, he goes, "You should do something with it one day because it would make a hell of a good short story."
When I was in college, my best friend calls me one night and he's like, "Yo, what are you doing on Friday? Do you want to go to the bar for my birthday?" Now, obviously, I'm always down to go to the bar. But this was strange because this guy never drinks, especially not on his birthday. So, as a broke student, I knew that, I need to prep a little bit, accumulate the funds. So, skip a lunch here, dinner to there, just so I have enough money to get this guy trashed on his birthday. It's Friday night, and we're at the Fox Cabaret, right on Main Street, and it's 80s night. And my buddy's there, and he's got a group of friends with him. We get there, we're getting drunk, we're right on stage, but I am exhausted. But that is when I saw her. She was stunning. In a bright red leather jacket, matte black shades, in the nightclub, with long blonde hair down to her shoulders. I just couldn't take my eyes off her. Now I'm on stage with my friends trying to boost morale, dance along, trying to not kill the fun, but all I could look at was her. So we're dancing, and then my friends want a bit of a break. The birthday boy's drunk, and we go out to the street for a smoke. We're having a cigarette, and then I see her again, but now with her 2 friends, leaving the club, going towards a car, I guess. Looks like they were leaving, and there goes that dream. We go back inside, but at this point I decide to just take it easy a little bit and chill with 2 friends that I met that night. So we go to the upstairs bar, and I realize these 2 friends are just vibing a little bit, flirting, and the third wheel energy just becomes a little too strong for me. So I quietly decide to go downstairs, grab a seat at the bar. Now, I love dancing, but I was just exhausted that night. But that meant dancing, except just from the waist up. So I get into my zone, I'm vibing out to 80s rock music, when a woman comes and sits right next to me. She's like, "What are you doing?" So I tell her, it's getting late, so it's upper body only dancing hours. She laughs, and we start dancing in our chairs together. Only from the waist up, remember? So we start talking, and we're telling each other about where we're from. She's from a small town, and she moved out here for college. She's a librarian, she has a dorky smile and a cute ponytail. So she has this really cool finger tattoo. So I ask her about it, and then we talk about her tattoos, and then she starts rolling up her shirt and showing me this beautiful constellation piece on her arm. And she tells me about how each star represents one of her 3 beautiful children. So I'm hearing her stories, and hearing her gush about her kids. But all I could really think is, am I ready for this? We're vibing, she's giving me all the right signs. But what happens if I go home with her tonight? Do I, play with the kids in the morning? I love kids. I'm great with kids. You know? But what about their father figure? These kids need a strong role model in their life. You know? Am I ready to raise these kids? I'm 20. Am I ready to be a dad? You know? Am I breaking up a happy family by going home with her tonight? You know? I'm caught up in my head. I don't know what to do next. So the night goes on, the music starts to wind down, and she looks at me. I guess, she pauses. I guess I should go find my friends, huh? Me, in all my confusion. Yeah, I guess so. Good night. Obviously, such an idiot. And she disappears off into the crowd, and I go back to find my friends. So I find my boys, and we're getting ready to leave, and she comes by to see me one last time. But not before, she says, "It was good meeting you," and smiles and walks off into the crowd. But not before she lets down her long blonde hair, puts on those same matte black shades, and that red leather jacket. She smiles one last time, and then walks right out of my life. As I stand there, realizing, God damn it, I just lost a sane girl twice. So I'm back home later with my friend, who is now drunk and passed out on the couch beside me. And I'm just sitting there thinking about my fears, my doubts, you know, thinking about my own dad growing up. And I decided that night, I'm never gonna let that doubt hold me back again. Because the next time life gives me an opportunity like that, I know that I'm gonna be an amazing stepfather.